All right, JAG University, episode 21. We hit the 20. We're in the 20s now. We're in the second floor.
We're legal now.
We're legal. Oh, that's true. They got a little. Why not? A little cocktail.
Yeah.
I'm here with Andy Fajardo, aka Captain Andy. Andy talking, and I want to kind of get a little in depth about maritime insurance. You know, it's one of those super niche or niche. I'm not sure how to say that word yet. Depending on what day it is.
Right.
But it's one of those coverages that really, when you get in depth, you've taught me now a lot, just getting really in depth with some of the coverages. But on a high level, what do you think are kind of, what are maybe a do and don'ts or maybe the biggest misconception about marine coverage?
Some of the biggest misconceptions, I think, are that once you purchase a marine policy or a policy that insures the type of work that you do, that automatically everything's going to be covered. You need to dig down deep and look into what you're doing and then what the actual policy covers.
So it's about what's not covered, right?
Exactly.
It's so everyone, we look at the coverage forms, but the forms are so the attention's in the details.
Correct.
I mean, what would be kind of a standard coverage? Like marine, let's just talk about, I mean, is it maritime or vessel coverage?
Right.
I mean, is it more geographical limitations or is it more, like what are some of the big subjectivities you got to be looking after?
Let's say you're a contractor that works on commercial vessels.
Right.
One big endorsement is traveling workmen. Means that your work is not only covered at your shop, which is where you're not doing any of your work and you're basically getting ready for your job, but your work is covered on board commercial vessels. Most of the time, those vessels are either at the port, but most likely than not, they're international.
So
They're abroad.
They're abroad.
So it's covering the work of your laborers abroad.
And that's going to be different. That's more of a GL's perspective, or is that more of the, when you get to
GL.
the more, what about the comp USLNH
The
type
comp is
endorsement?
the whole
different thing. 'Cause that's another kind of like waterfall too, about where you are, international waters, US waters. Is there a
Right.
distance that can you break down the USLNH?
Well, there's a distance element, and there's two real components. There's the workman's comp USLNH angle, which is covering your workers for injuries that take place while they're working at, near, or adjacent to U.S. navigable waters. So basically, you're working right on the water's edge. That could be working on a commercial vessel at a boatyard. That could be working building seawalls. Any one of those kind of activities.
Okay.
And then there's a separate other type of coverage called MEL, which is Maritime Employers Liability, which it's not like workers' comp, where it's covering you for injuries. It's covering you for liabilities that arise from your workers getting injured while working aboard vessels away from the shoreline or away from where USLNH is covered.
Okay, so it's kind of the gap between. That's interesting. Like as far as and how many I guess when you break that down, a lot of companies are, as they're evolving, and everybody's evolving now. Like pre-COVID, post-COVID, it's about now geographical limitations or geographical areas is kind of a big conversation you have to have with clients, right?
Right.
Where you're going, who you're going with. As far as let's say potential lawsuits, how would that work in essence, right? You're doing work, let's just say in Barbados, right? As far as a contract based here in the U.S., like how does that work? Is there language you could put in the actual policy to bring suits here to avoid potential conflicts?
Right. You want to make sure that your policies cover you for, it's called a worldwide endorsement, to make sure that your policies cover you for the work that you're doing worldwide, as well as make sure that you're covered for suits that might arise worldwide. So
Okay.
Most policies, when we're talking about GL for your common type of business, will cover you for the work that you're doing here, because it just assumes that you're working here.
Right.
And it just assumes that suits are going to be brought here. Whereas when you're working on maritime or you're working on vessels, most of the time the work isn't here. Even though the contract is here, the operations are here, but they might pull laborers from from other countries to go work somewhere else. And even though the contract is based here, it's kind of like a muddy water type of situation in terms of.
No, and I think those muddy waters, you think that's why and what brought you into kind of getting your certified, is it CPM, Certified Marine?
CMIP.
CMIP. I mean,
Certified Marine Insurance Professional. I will be completing it in October.
Nice. But you saw that as kind of, were you always interested in seeing those? Like, were you always curious? I know you had a background getting into law. Was that those muddy waters, was that kind of like something you were intrigued by?
Right. I was intrigued by it, and I saw it as an opportunity to, if I was able to learn the ins and outs of that industry, I'd be able to separate myself from just Joe Schmo
Across the street,
like working at a bucket shop. It's super technical. There's a lot of different issues that come up with different types of coverages, not only on your MGL, but also on your USLNH, MEL, a bunch of different cargo. And there's so many different issues, and it's so technical on every single one of the policies that it just like provided me with an opportunity to learn that in and out and separate myself from everyone else.
No, and I see it. I just maritime law in general seems very overwhelming.
Oh.
I mean, even the adjusting firms that are hired within the maritime space, it's super high level as well.
Mm-hmm.
So even those potential claims, there's so many moving parts, which is fascinating. I'm glad, obviously, you're navigating those waters.
Right.
So that's why little pun, Captain Andy. I like it. No, but I mean, and as far as talking about, like, let's go back to USLNH, which is the workers' comp part about, I think, is there a reason why you think a lot of companies don't understand that? Because there's a lot of people who do work, but then they might be getting close to the water. And now, like, just the way overall when you submit an account, right? A lot of times that's an automatic declination. Most insurance carriers, they see those four-letter abbreviation, they kind of walk away from it. So isn't there kind of like that gray area too, where is it really a true USLNH exposure? Is it
or are you even working while you're at the port? That's an issue that comes up too, working on cruise ship contractors or companies that service the cruise lines, where you might be boarding the vessel here in Miami, but your work might not start until the vessel's already at sea.
At sea.
So you might need what's called like an if any coverage for USLNH, because while you're boarding the vessel, you're right there on the water's edge. You're on U.S. navigable waters, and you're technically working because you're not at the office, you're not home, but you're not doing your actual job.
It's another gray area.
It's super, super gray. It's all different shades of gray.
Well, what is true? A lot of it, but it's kind of one of those things where it's true. If it's not explained correctly, I can see why a lot of just overall, when you're talking to customers and business owners who obviously are in that business, like articulating what is the exposure and how to kind of pivot it when you're getting it to an underwriter as well.
Right. There was one situation where I was working on an account. They provided cleaning solutions to the cruise ships. And this gentleman, he was a sales rep. He needed to go aboard the vessels, maybe like for every vessel, maybe once, twice a year, to work with the cleaning staff and make sure that they knew where the chemicals needed to be stored, how they were supposed to be used. And this was all taught in a very simple course, but all taught while the vessel was at sea. So he's boarding the vessel.
Right.
And he needed coverage, but there was no actual work being done while he's on the vessel at port. His job started while the vessel was already on its way.
And that small gap too could be a problem, because if your current workers' comp carrier can't offer that if any basis, it becomes kind of like potential non-renewal. Now you open up a can of worms if you're not explaining it correctly.
Huge.
Yeah. No, the maritime marine, is there a difference as far as those two words as well? Because I'm in the middle.
Right. They're kind of interchangeable. Marina I see as being higher up in terms of encompassing maritime, but it depends on how you want to look at it. Maritime just basically encompasses commercial vessels, working on commercial vessels. Marine might be your boat yard or anything like that. Marine just encompasses everything while you're working on vessels or working on anything related to the ocean, which I feel kind of maritime falls under that.
Right.
But there's no real distinction. I mean, the distinction would be between commercial and recreational vessels, really, I guess.
Okay.
Because boat yards that work on open fishery or something like that, repairing those types of vessels, don't refer to themselves as maritime. They refer to themselves more as a marine type of operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I learned something today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dude, JAG University episode 21, just as a recap, maritime insurance, pay attention to the details, right? It's about what's not covered. Right. And have those conversations, really deal with an expert, because some of the forms, it's not going to affect your premium per se, right? But it's about the subjectivities of how to navigate those gray areas. You really got to get really in depth on that.
Right. Make sure that your agent knows what it is that you're doing, and make sure that they're conveying it to the underwriters in the correct way, to make sure that your policy, when it comes back, has all the different types of endorsements to cover exactly what you're doing, where you're doing it, and cover any possible exposures. it's not so much about making sure that there's certain endorsements in there to save on premium. It's more to make sure that there's certain endorsements in there to cover you in the event that something happens and you're open to huge exposures of a lawsuit that you had no idea that you weren't covered for.
Yeah, both here or international.
Exactly.
Too. Nice. All right, I do appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.